KLEAN Residential Treatment Center, a dynamic and professional addiction treatment facility.
KLEAN Radio features celebrity and professional interviews covering a wide range of topics. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance in dealing with addictive disorders, call us now at 877-830-830 or go to KLEANradio.com. Now your hosts for KLEAN Radio, Andrew and Judah.
It's a show about addiction and recovery. We're back after our wonderful week off where we actually got to take a little bit of a vacation.
Sure.
Here with Judah, my co-host.
Hey now.
This is Andrew.
It's so bad you can't say hey now and everybody doesn't think, you stole it from the Howard Stern show.
Is that where that comes from?
No, I got it from Gary Shandling's show or the Larry Sanders show.
Oh, that's what it's from, right?
Yeah, because Hey Now, Hank Kingsley.
Yeah, I remember that. That's going back like 10 years now.
15.
Really?
Yeah, we're getting old.
Oh, don't remind me.
Why don't you explain people what KLEAN is?
What KLEAN is?
How did you come up with the name KLEAN?
I was actually
with
thinking,
a K.
Yeah, I was thinking of actually doing an online magazine, and so I thought what would be a cool name for an online magazine, and I came up with the idea of KLEAN.
With a K.
Yeah, well, because C would be like cleaning products, like Procter & Gamble cleaning products or something like that.
Right. Yes.
So I thought K was it was a little cool and hip and whatever. I don't know.
Like fat with a PH.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Not that cool and hip, but my attempt at that kind of cool and hip. So.
Right on.
Yeah, it's part of our style. I mean, I think there's something a little different about KLEAN and how we do things and. That we cater to a certain type of clientele, I think, that is interested in things being a little bit different, and so the K sort of represents that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is interesting, though, the whole idea of treating that there's a difference in treatment.
Absolutely.
Which I don't think a lot of people realize. Somebody was thanking me today. Somebody said to me, and I can't obviously I can't share, I can't divulge because I helped them get into the treatment center, and they really wanted to thank me, and I hate being thanked. I hate being given compliments, and
you can't receive.
I can't receive, and but they
That's
said
funny. You just took like a pack of cigarettes from me pretty quickly.
I have no problem taking cigarettes from you, and it's the least I could get. And but they were thanking me. They go, had you not stepped in and had you not known about this, my mother probably would have ended up in a psychiatric, in some facility that was,
right.
Like a potter's field of rehabs.
Right, and that's really what the difference is between us and most rehabs is that we really do a lot of psychiatric work as well as chemical dependency work.
And I'm not just saying that. It's not like if you just tuned in, I'm not just like, this isn't like a clean infomercial. This actually happened today. Somebody thanked me for that.
That's cool.
And
you were running the barbecue today, right?
I was running the barbecue today at the KLEAN Treatment Center, which we do every Sunday night. It's fun.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I end up smelling like a barbecue for a week.
I know, it's great. I come and do the radio show, and you smell like hamburgers and hot dogs.
That's why you're hungry the whole ride.
Right? That's why I'm gaining weight.
Yeah, blame it on me. I'm your total like fault guy. You're fired. Why? Because Judah.
Talk to Judah.
Yeah, talk to Judah. So one of the things we were talking about, we actually had a fun car ride down, Patrick. Your hair is looking great. Patrick is the best video guy in LA. And
his hair's getting fluffier.
I know.
Like he's going 70s on us.
Well, he's moving to Silver Lake.
He's doing the soft porn.
Yeah.
And his hair is going like kind of fluffy.
He's like a cross between like John Holmes right now and
Rosie O'Donnell.
And Rosie O'Donnell, yeah. And we were talking about on the ride.
We're not getting video for next week in case anybody wonders what happened.
No, we're ending up looking really badly.
Yeah, right.
And by the way, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. You could find us at KLEANradio.com or find us at Facebook at KLEAN Radio. You could also call us at 877-8830-830. That's 877-8830-830. We were talking about this on the ride down, and I think it's really important because we were talking about somebody from a famous band, and can I say the name?
Yeah,
it's okay.
why not?
We were talking about Henry Rollins, and people aren't familiar with Henry Rollins. He was the lead singer of the famous Black Flag, and the Henry Rollins Band.
Flag.
I said Black Flag,
not the Black Flag.
Oh, Black. I'm sorry, I put everything as
Black
the. As he was the lead singer of Black Flag. And we were talking about, like, he doesn't drink, right? I mean, he doesn't drink, he doesn't use drugs, but
he did for a long time.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and then he got sober.
Oh, I thought.
But he did it all on his own.
He did it all on his own because he still looks very angry.
He's still very angry.
Yeah, he's like one
an
of those
angry guy.
Yeah, he's like one of those people that could probably use a little therapy. But
well, he thinks his art is his therapy, I think.
Yes, but he hasn't done much lately.
His art
He hasn't done a lot of
I love Henry. I mean, I've actually met him once or twice, and he's a nice guy. He's
extremely talented. But we're also talking about Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent's another guy that walks around bragging that he doesn't use alcohol, doesn't drink, but he might have benefited from it, and hitting a bottom because now he's like one of these. He's a walking anger.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's several components to everything, and that addiction to a particular substance or substances, or becoming what now is being defined of having an addictive brain, and there's a big fight right now between psychology and neurology about the definition of addiction, and we're seeing that more and more the definition from the neurological perspective, not the DSM, and that's the manual that they create for the psychiatrists to be able to bill.
Yes.
But the neurologist came out and said that there's actually this addictive pattern that changes the brain, and then it doesn't matter what the substance is or what the process is. It's just this actual change in the brain. And once you enter into that addictive cycle, your brain is stuck in that addictive cycle, and you're stuck with that type of personality, which is very much like the traditional sort of thinking of AA.
Right, which is like once you're a pickle, you can't become a cucumber again.
Right, and psychology or psychiatry is still trying to define addiction in much different terms from a different disease model approach.
But so here's a better. So, it's something I heard somebody years ago say this. He goes, this is the only addiction that you treat it, and I know it's oversimplified, by talking and eating. And he's like, most people with AIDS or cancer would kill to have that sort of treatment where it's basically you're talking about yourself,
right?
And you're trying to you're trying to.
You don't do cancer, and you just talk about it, and it goes away.
Right, right. That's exactly right. Or diabetes, you say, hey, let me talk about my sugar.
Well, maybe there should be more of that with diabetes.
Which one of our guests was actually talking about? Right. Who I'll remember in a second. Not Ken. I was going to say Ken Seeley, but he hasn't been a guest. Doug Kane.
Yeah, that's
right.
And
from Intervention Now. But that's, I think, a huge thing is like people out there that are struggling. It's so amazing that the cure for alcoholism and addiction isn't such a bad cure. It's like if you could get into treatment and you could start to look at things, it's far better than having to get chemotherapy.
Right.
It's far better than having to take how many drugs people have to take to fight AIDS.
A lot. It's a cocktail.
Yeah, that might work.
Yeah.
And
well, it's they've come a long way. I just spent the week in Oregon.
Yes, you did.
Which was beautiful.
And you caught a fish. I know you want to brag about.
I have to brag about catching two. Actually, I got seven giant salmon, but I had to throw 5 back because of the law. Which was,
why couldn't you give it to the other people that didn't catch it?
The reason I couldn't keep them wasn't, I limited out, and I should have been able to give them over, but they actually have these dumb laws where you can only keep hatchery-raised salmon. So even though by the time you land them, they're dead, you have to throw it back anyway because it's a natural fish.
You know what's amazing
it's
about?
It's just dumb.
You know what's amazing about radio?
You know
what's amazing about radio? Somebody tuned in 10 seconds ago.
They think we're a fishing show.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like amazing about radio. No matter when you tune in, it could be something else.
That's right.
Yes. We were talking about your porn star days.
Which means that when we're really bad, it can go to really good. So so skip that last segment and things will get better.
And the number here is 877-8830-830. That's 877-8830-830. But we were talking about this, and I think it's an important question. Can somebody have alcoholism without ever drinking?
Well, I think you can have character defects that are addressed in the treatment of alcoholism, right? Certainly, like resentments. There's lots of people we know that have resentments, and then there's that whole aspect of personality disorders or cluster B issues from a psychiatric standpoint. So people that are narcissistic or paranoid or schizoid personality disorder or borderline, and these are all various clusters of personality traits that people can have, many of which are highly dysfunctional. And people that have addiction tend to be people that also self-medicate for a lot of these problems. So I think when you look at people that have gotten better with their addiction, they've also gotten better with their addiction because they've also addressed a lot of these cluster B or personality trait issues, and they've looked for spiritual or other types of, not to be too new agey, but, self-help type interventions, or they've worked with a professional therapist to really work through a lot of the psychiatric issues that they have going on or mental health issues. So when we look at, from being sober people, looking at people that aren't sober but are exhibiting what looks like alcoholic personality traits, right? What we're really seeing are a lot of traits that tend to be covered up by people that are alcoholics.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Andrew Medical Hour on AM 830.
We're going to change the name of the show.
To the Andrew Medical
Yeah, and
Hour.
I'll have to get an MD. So
Yes.
maybe not in Hollywood, right?
Definitely not in Hollywood.
Right?
In Hollywood, you are who you say you are.
Right.
And we are located
Talking
in
about narcissism.
KLEAN
right?
is located in Hollywood, which I think is also pretty cool. And I think constantly watching people's face as they walk through the door, of the treatment center. I'm not talking about people that need it. I'm talking about even just family members. They're sort of amazed that the place like that, even just the establishment, how it looks, is located in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool.
The other thing is cool. This past week, I just did the Dr. Drew show.
Yes, you did the Dr. Drew show.
I did 2 episodes of Life Changes.
I didn't know if we were allowed to talk about it yet, but
Oh,
apparently we are.
I don't think we are, actually, but who cares?
Yes, Andrew will be seen soon on Dr. Drew's Life Changers.
I think it's coming up in about 30 days.
And there's actually a huge poster now on Sunset. Not of
Yeah,
you, but of Dr. Drew's new show, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, it was interesting. It wasn't live. I thought it was going to be shot live, and it was.
Nothing is shot live anymore.
Right?
I hate to break
Bill
your...
Maher.
Bill Maher.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting. I think about Dr. Drew, he's sort of a fascinating character in the sense that he does open the doors for a lot of people to get help. Right. I mean, there's no doubt at this point he is...
Well, he has groupies. I mean, I was amazed. I mean, this is his new daytime show. I guess his Life Changers is the name of it. And, there was one other guy besides me in the audience, and then I was the expert there to, work with this intervention that we did.
And everybody else was women?
The whole entire audience was skewed. It was all, he's taking the 3 o'clock Oprah hour, right? So, and then I guess Anderson Cooper's coming in trying to compete with him.
Yeah.
Both off headline news. Very strange.
Well, they're both very womanly, very womanly friendly. And who else is watching TV in the daytime?
Womanly friendly? Is this a new Judaism?
Yes, that is a Judaism. Womanly friendly.
My mother's gonna have a heyday with that one.
But but I think that's really. I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. Also, is Dr. Drew, in a sense, has opened the doors for many people to get help that normally wouldn't get help. There's this, and I know there's a fight back that, celebrity rehab. And listen, I've had my own opinions on places like celebrity rehab and all these shows that they're exploitive, but they're also, it's a hard thing.
Yes, it was a hard thing for me to decide to even do the show or not.
Right.
It's like, because I'm really sort of opposed to putting anybody that's getting treatment on camera. I think that it sort of sets them up to go in for the wrong reasons. They're going in to be on TV instead of going in to get help. And I really think treatment should be a private thing.
But nothing is private anymore. It's almost like rehab and all this stuff is taking on no different than the reality television world,
right,
where everything is, there's no more really anonymity. People don't really care anymore.
Well, the whole concept of privacy in America
right,
is the internet's kind of destroyed that.
Right.
I mean, and there was somebody put some horrible post about my wife or something online.
That was me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Because I pissed you off last week. And and I was just like, you have to realize that people write anything they want, and the more famous you get, the more people write crazy things, and there's just only so much you can do about it.
There's nothing you could do about it.
But and it's for adults. I think it's like adults. You're an adult. Handle it. It's not the end of the world. Most people have something out there written about them that's horrible. But when adolescents, it's horrible. These kids are going after each other on Facebook and stuff. And
well, it's a new. But that's what it's like, a whole new revolution.
The cyberbullying, I guess you're calling it,
and all this stuff, and the texting, and the sexting, and all this stuff. I don't know how. I mean, the kids today are they're in so many ways they're ahead of the 8 ball, but in so many ways they're behind the 8 ball.
Is that a drug reference?
Yes, it is. But I think that's an important question. Are these things helpful to getting people help? I think that's if the listeners out there, are these things beneficial or are they harmful?
It's definitely a great question. For me, just to kick that conversation off, I think it was a decision that I decided to do it because I think you have to embrace wherever the conversation's going. And either you're going to be a part of it or you're not. And from traditional media with television to new media to tweeting to Facebook.
You could say it.
You know, and tweeting. You know, all these things are things that are spreading the message of, you know, whatever you're talking about and becoming more and more important. And, you know, this whole concept of anonymity and addiction has become really the hot topic. I think that's probably the hottest topic on the addiction forums right now is that, you know, should we just get rid of the concept of anonymity? Because, you know, it's kind of out of date.
Every time people say it, I want to say, what's the definition? If you could tell me what the definition of anonymity is, we will have this conversation. We actually have a great guest tonight.
Two great guests.
Two great guests tonight. But our first one, former actor, I found out before. He starred in Bachelor Party, just a bunch of really cool movies in the 80s. And then he switched careers and he became a therapist.
After that movie, he probably had to become a therapist. It was probably
yes,
movie was. I remember that movie being shocking at the time.
Well, yeah,
right?
Isn't that amazing?
Right? I mean, now I probably look at it, probably like, oh, after The Hangover and everything, and it's kind of in the right. It's like there's a whole genre of bachelor party movies, right?
But Bachelor Party was the first.
It was the first, right?
Yeah, and it was also like, I guess it was like in those days they were making like, you know, there was like the Porkies, and then there was like the Say Any, you know, the John Hughes, and then there was like Bachelor Party was one of the few that was actually in the center, which was a little, risque, but also had a really good story to it.
Right.
And the guy tonight, you know, our guest Bradford Bancroft is a therapist now, which I think is really cool, the transition, because you know, when you're an actor, it's being a therapist too. You know, understanding, listening, and doing all that stuff.
We'll let him talk about that.
Yeah. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Clearly not an actor.
I know, I'm definitely not an actor. I don't play one on TV. And the number here is 877-8830-830. The number here is 877-8830-830. Give us a call. When we come back, we'll be talking to Bradley Bancroft, and you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's clean with a K, not to be confused with the C. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
The waves keep on crashing on me for some reason.
Addiction is any behavior you cannot stop that results in destructive consequences. Are you struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol? Are you ready to take control of your life? The treatment advisors at KLEAN Treatment Center are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. The sooner you reach out for help, the sooner your new life begins.
KLEAN Radio
The Sober Lifestyle Show, presented by KLEAN Residential Treatment Center.
on Angels Radio AM 830.
The Judah dance. Something that everyone should never experience.
And do it with my eyes closed.
This is Andrew. You're back on KLEAN Radio listening to our show on addiction and recovery.
Yes, we're in the studio now by, sorry I messed up your name the first time, Bradford Bancroft.
It's okay. Usually I answer to, hey, jerk.
And,
Hey, yo.
and but it is an easy name to tongue twist.
I know.
I'm sure you've faced it your whole life. I get Jonah all the time.
When I was in high school,
Judas.
Judas, yeah, I get that a lot in Arizona.
there was a guy who in high school said, Bradford, what kind of name is that? I'm calling you Joe, and for 40 years he's only called me Joe. He's never called me by my right name.
That's actually great.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Okay, so we'll call you Joe.
Right.
Great to be here on the show with you guys.
Thank
Oh,
you.
really?
Thank you for
Yeah, it's
coming
great
down to
to have you here.
Anaheim.
It is very cool. Finally getting to meet the Judah,
Yes.
Right?
And to see the Judah dance.
the Judah dance.
Yeah.
I've been looking at some of the pictures of the guys that you've had on the show, and I was amazed to see that you'd interviewed Brian Eno on this show. And I'm looking going, Brian Eno, I love... Oh, no. That was Dr. Jason Coe. It wasn't Brian Eno.
He looks a lot like Brian Eno. I never thought about that.
Funny.
He does look like Brian Eno.
Cross with David Byrne.
He does listen to the show.
Right. I know he's listening
thank
right
God
now.
he doesn't know who either of them are.
He does know Bob Dylan, I
He
think.
does know Bob Dylan.
He has more Bob Dylan CDs than anybody I've ever
No,
met.
I know one person that has more Bob Dylan CDs than anybody.
Who's that, Bob Dylan?
No. Yeah, but probably not.
You think so? You
No.
don't, he's got to have everything.
Ben Stein has more Bob Dylan CDs.
Really?
I swear to you, he's got more Bob Dylan CDs. He one time asked me to burn for him on a computer, like every song. Like I swear to God, he had like at least. I mean, there were different discs of Bob Dylan does Hawaii. You know, it was like Bob Dylan in Nevada, and like literally every Bob Dylan. I mean, he has an addiction to Bob Dylan, and then it's really funny because Bruce Springsteen too, and very similar in a way.
Really? I don't see the
Two
similarity
singers
at
you have to
all.
listen very intently to so you can understand what they're saying.
Oh.
Yeah, Bob was always slurring. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the downers of the alcohol, but
I like.
always
I
slurring.
like.
No, it was more romantic, the slur.
I definitely like Bob Dylan once he went electric. Like I thought that was cool.
I have no idea what you're talking about
Okay,
since I've
forget
never
it.
been a Bob Dylan fan. So
He
Bradford,
was like a folk music singer. And
I
then he
know who
went, like,
I mean, God knows I know who Bob Dylan is, especially Jewish. She's part of the Hanukkah
and you
song.
burned every CD ever.
I burnt
done.
every CD, but listen to none of the songs except Hurricane.
Oh,
Because I
there you go.
remember when that movie came out, that song became really popular again.
No.
This is the story
Yeah,
of
that
the
was an
hurricane.
awesome song.
Yeah, horrible movie, but
Yeah.
great
Keep
song.
going. Keep going.
And I got in a huge fight. You know what's really funny about that movie is I got in a huge fight with a girlfriend I was dating at the time because she hadn't read the news in like 26 years. And I go, it's hard to watch a movie when I know that he's going to go to jail and I know, and she goes, why'd you ruin it for me? And I was like, haven't you been reading the news? This movie's been in the news all week. And she ran out of the movie theater. Yes, that was my hurricane date story. Anyways, let's get back to Brad.
I was so glad that you asked him about how KLEAN started because I'm a new KLEAN member.
Yes.
And I didn't really know how it started, so that was cool. Cool hearing that.
It's actually a little more in depth though too. Andrew was at a different rehab at the time. And
Yeah, I was CEO of another rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to own 9 psychiatric hospitals before this.
Who cares?
So.
He
Who
just tells us
cares,
that to brag.
That's cool.
I am
That's
9
cool.
psychiatric. I could maybe help
Suddenly
people.
I'm nervous now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
right.
was cool before.
And now the heat is on.
Actually, let me ask you a good question. We'll
Sure.
get back to you in a
No,
second,
no
Bradford.
worries, no
Right?
I got many good questions for you.
No
Yeah, we only brought you here to fill a seat.
I
Don't
was
worry
here
about
to-
it.
You're right. You're like a seat
That's
filler.
right.
And but that's a good question because when you tell people that you own 9 psychiatric centers, what's
Right.
their express? Obviously, okay, it's great you have experience, but do they, in your mind, somehow like if I was dating a psychiatrist, I would think she was evaluating me the whole time.
Right.
Do you get that reaction from people when you talk about because there is a difference between a rehab treatment center and a psychiatric center?
Well, I think there's still a huge stigma to psychiatric
That's it.
treatment versus, addiction treatment, which is bizarre to me because anyone that really knows that it's all under mental health. There's really no difference. But a lot of people, I think, still see psychiatric illness in all the broad categories as so scary. And that's actually why I first went into the field. Back when I was in college, I did fine art and sociology as an undergrad. And I was sort of fascinated by art, but I was also fascinated by the mentally ill. And I worked for a suicide prevention and crisis hotline in college. That was sort of my first volunteer job working in the field. And then I ended up getting an MSW at Tulane in New Orleans, so a master's in social work, in clinical social work, and I ended up working for 5 years in a psychiatric hospital.
He keeps bragging.
No, I'm just trying to give you a
That
quick
is such
background.
hard work. That
Yeah,
is just
lockdown.
hard.
But you're right,
acute
though.
care
I like what you
psychiatric.
said about the stigma.
But
It's
the
very
reason
funny.
that I picked that was, and I was so interested in it, was because I was never like scared of the mentally ill. I was always sort of oddly interested in why people were different, and I always seemed to be able to bond well with people that were mentally ill, probably because I'm nuts.
Birds of a feather
But
flock
I always,
together.
yeah, but I was never really scared or intimidated, and I always wanted to know more about it. And so part of getting my MSW and then working for those first 5 years in really acute care lockdown psychiatric units was I wanted to see the full spectrum of human behavior and figure out what is deviant psychiatric mental disorders and what's just, deviant behavior that's maybe chosen, and then what's the normal spectrum of human behavior overall. Because people ask, they say, what's human behavior? And I says, everything that human beings do, that's, so go look at it all. And when you really work in a real psychiatric hospital, you actually, any doubt that there's psychiatric illness goes away within about the first 15 minutes. You
Right.
know, like all this stuff with Scientology,
Yeah.
where people are saying that psychiatry is some sort of sham or scam or whatever. You work in a psychiatric hospital for 50 minutes. Put Tom Cruise in a lockdown
Hell
psychiatric unit for 15 minutes with no Haldol or Ativan available. And he will change every opinion he
That would be
has about
great if
psychiatry.
we unleash psychiatric people in the Church of Scientology,
Right, just bring
and lock the doors.
12
Yeah.
schizophrenics over there
Yeah.
that are in full-blown paranoid schizophrenic state, fully delusional, and let him loose. He'll change his mind very quickly about mental illness.
Well, fellas, while we were in New York when Reagan released all the folks from Bellevue, in
Right,
the early
Deinstitutionalization, and that was late deinstitutionalization. but-
everybody's on the street.
Yeah, everybody on the streets, and now they're in prison. And there's about one psychiatrist for about 300 prisoners
Right.
in the average prison. So it's just terrible what's happened. I mean, the whole field is really, and in some ways it's been a bunch of different reasons why things have turned out the way they have.
So one more question to you before we actually get to our real guest.
Okay.
Right.
I'm having a great time.
So no, but I think it's very curious. So do you think people look at you, and say, "Oh, you were in psychiatry"? Do you think you almost also get get the stigma on you because of the
More from people that are alcoholics, that are pure 12-step sort of based treatment people, and I don't blame them actually, because prior to me getting into the addiction field as well, and I was just doing psychiatric work, I was very dismissive of the addiction recovery community, because I saw it all as secondary stuff.
Right.
I saw everything as primary psychiatric illness, and that addiction was just secondary, and it wasn't even really a presenting issue for the most part. The average psychiatric hospital that I was running at the time, we would have one group on addiction once a week.
Wow.
And they would get presented with some 12-step literature, and that was it. And I think part of what starting KLEAN was about was bridging that divide between addiction treatment and psychiatric treatment, and then showing how there's this huge gulf in the middle, and that really the people that are doing psychiatric work and the people that are doing addiction work are really on the same side of the table, and they need to open up communication and work better together.
What do you think is holding that back? And I have my own opinions, and I'll give you my opinion before you answer that. I'll give you both this question, is in the sense there is no leader in AA.
Right.
There's nobody in the 12-step. There's no debate because there's nobody that's going to.
By design, it's not supposed to
Right,
be
it's right.
debated.
Each group is autonomous. There are no, leaders of trusted servants. So there can be no debate because there is nobody to debate. So it's almost doctors debating doctors about.
Yeah. Well, I think, but you look at all professions, and they hold two critical criteria for a profession. So one is to become an expert in that field. So if you're going to become a psychiatrist, you got to do a lot of work, you got to study a lot of things, and then eventually you become credentialed by your peers, right, who then credential you with that credential as a psychiatrist. The other thing it serves as is gatekeeping to stop anybody and everybody from being able to do what psychiatrists do. And that's a big part of any profession. So in mental health, you get this weird spectrum of a lot of different titles. So once you get down from psychiatrist, which is sort of the highest level of medical doctor with mental health expertise, and then you go down to psychologist, and then there's like 3 different levels of psychologists, and then you get down to a whole variety of master's level therapists. So you have MFTs, Masters of Family Therapy, you have Masters of Social Work, and then there's all sorts of MSWs. There's family practitioner MSWs, there's clinical MSWs, then there's community social organizing MSWs. So there's all specialties within that one degree. And then there's just masters in therapy. There's, there's a bunch of them. Then you get down to KDAC levels.
What's more amazing is that you know all of them.
Yeah, right.
That is that is what I'm absolutely.
Because I have to hire all
Yeah,
of
that's
them.
true.
So, but it's all about different perspectives and different gatekeeping and different ways of getting into the field, and all of them come from different schools of thought. And even with psychiatry, we've talked about this with Dr. Koh, there's 2 main branches. There's a psychoanalytic perspective started by Freud, and all the people have gone that route, that's about the ego structure and the brain and the superego and the id. And then you've got the idea that things come from the subconscious and then are developed into the ego, and everything revolves around the ego. And then you've got all the new age sort of young, post-young, Albert Ellis, cognitive behavioral therapy, didactical behavioral therapy, all this stuff about it's in the present, it's in the mind, mindfulness, changing behavior and thoughts in the present, and don't worry about where it really came from or what's going on. So you've got huge divides even within the biggest levels of the field about how to treat people and where pathology comes from or illness.
And Andrew, one thing that I was thinking as you were talking is the problem of dual diagnosis, because before we can get into the psychology of it, we've got to get people clean, because so much of the behavior is often, attributed to alcohol and drug use. And
Absolutely.
And so,
Well, one of the things you find out really quickly working in a psychiatric hospital is that what people present themselves as in the first 24 hours is not what they have.
Right.
And you see this especially in treatment centers as well, where people come in and they just seem out of control and whatever. And within 3 or 4 days, you start to see what happens.
No, we were talking about that before.
Right. Now, it used to be that you had 30 days to make that initial diagnosis. That was sort of like the standard. Now, because of insurance and because of resources that are available, they've been compressing what people think is a normal length of treatment into shorter and shorter periods of time.
Well, let's use your car as an example. Last week, I had to bring Andrew's old car in. He got a new car, a new Fiat, and I had to bring his old car in. And I was sort of fascinating as they do this check with the key, and they could check everything, but for some reason your key wasn't dialing in. But so they could check everything of your engine, and they're looking at the list. The last thing they're like, oh, he hasn't serviced this in a while. First they thought we were a couple, and they go, how long have you guys been driving this car? And I'm like, I just brought it in today. We are not together. And but the amount of time they've been spending diagnosing.
Well, if they call my house and get Amy with her deep voice, they might think
it's
you.
me. Yeah,
and she's Jewish too. So there you go.
And but the amount of time that they have spent on your car. Imagine if they actually did that with people.
Right.
But why did they do it? Because they know they're going to make money.
Yeah.
We were talking about the service department, and dealerships make a lot more money than the cars actually probably sell. With the selling of the cars, they make tons of money doing this. And I think it's very sad that it's an industry that doesn't want to diagnose. That, it's like, because everybody sees house. Oh, you get diagnosed in an hour by house.
Right.
And
Everything's supposed to happen overnight.
Right. And getting diagnosed could take a while.
Well, also people have varying diagnoses over time, and a lot of these diseases develop, and we don't really know what they are at first. And you see that especially children will be diagnosed, or adolescents will be diagnosed with a mood disorder, and then it turns out it's schizophrenia, and you can't really make that definitive diagnosis until later on. And I would see people come in and they'd have a chart with 5 different diagnoses on there, and a lot of it is trying to really figure out what's going on.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio, by the way. The number here is 877-8830-830. That's 877-8830-830. You could also find us on KLEANradio.com. We live stream now. You could see what Andrew and I look like. You could actually witness the Judah dance live.
Should we take our sunny
It's
call?
our always sunny call.
It's our always sunny call.
Yeah, and
he calls every week.
Yeah, he calls every week. He was in mourning last week.
He's claiming he can only be on for 30 minutes on hold.
He's in prison, and
since we didn't get to talk to him last week,
his quarter's about to run up.
Right, Sonny, you there?
Oh gosh, I missed you guys. That's for dang sure.
We need like a little musical intro.
Yeah,
though.
we're gonna start having
It's
always sunny. Yeah, we're gonna start having.
Sunny.
How you be, Sonny?
I'm hanging in there. That's how it goes.
That sounds sad. What's up?
I'm doing pretty good. I gotta ask you guys, how was your little vacation?
It was nice. We missed you though.
Really?
Yes, we spoke about you all week.
Oh, I gotta hear about this. What did you guys speak to me about?
That if we ever were to switch stations, what would become of you? Would you follow us around?
Oh gosh, if I couldn't find you guys, I'd probably go insane.
That's what happened this past week.
Yeah.
and by the way, I actually like that name, by the way, for Judah. I like the Judah. I like that a lot.
You like that? Are you gonna start calling yourself the Sunny?
You're the Sunny, yeah.
No, I can't, because it doesn't have the at the end.
Oh.
No, I need something with that. That way we can become blood brothers.
I love it.
Blood brothers. He wants to be blood brothers.
Every week he's on the air. He hits puberty in the middle of a phone call.
It's fantastic.
And call yourself Honey Sunny.
Honey Sunny.
Or Funny Sunny.
Funny Sunny.
Funny Sunny.
I got an idea. How about the ladies' man?
The ladies, man.
Relax, Sonny.
Relax there. Take it easy.
Relax there, Skipper. Not yet.
You got to get a lady first.
Sonny's actually a really loyal listener. He says he's 15 years old. We have no way of proving it one way or not.
Right.
And he emailed us. He actually did email us this week saying that he wants to be a host. You know, he wants to guest host one night, and we need his parents' permission, and we want to run his background check before we.
By the way, I got some good news and bad news.
Okay, well, it's every week he's got the good news.
What's the bad news?
We would take the bad news first, of course.
The bad news is that my school took away my Facebook. Facebook is gone.
Aren't you homeschooled?
You're homeschooled, right? So that means your mom, right?
My schooling computer, and they took it away.
Oh, wow.
So they gave me a choice. They said keep the Facebook and get out of the program, or forget the Facebook and stay in the program. And I said I'm going to stay in the program because I need my schooling.
And
I don't know, Sonny. I think you made the wrong choice.
But what's the good news?
Oh, I already told you guys the good news.
Okay, you sound way too that sounds like way too perverted. It sounded like way too 900 line when he just said that.
What's the good news?
The good news is that I will be actually taking an off week throughout this coming week, and so I'm going to try to get my butt over there, make an appointment with you guys, so that way I can have my parents sign a little note over there, so that way I can get on over there next Sunday.
We do have to get him on camera.
Yeah, now next week we'll have him on.
We'll
Sonny, if you get all the
camera.
paperwork to us by next week, we'll have you on.
Right? And we can get the federal background check done.
And this is what we need you to wear. We need you to wear a bodysuit.
Right.
And that way we can see you're hiding nothing on you.
I might have to come back for this one, guys.
Oh, by the way, I have to tell Gio this. On that girlfriend, you can forget about that girlfriend I picked you on, Gio. Besides, she says that she loves your dance. She thinks it's sexy.
All right.
Did you
have
callers
callers setting me up? This is great.
I can't believe it. So you got any questions for us this week,
Yeah,
Sonny?
Sonny.
I got 3, actually, yeah.
3 questions? He comes prepared.
Yeah,
I love
all right.
it.
Okay, number 1.
You know what you guys should do for now? And you guys should do a little...
We are.
Wait, is this
Now-
criticism or a question?
Sonny, what's the question?
My question is that if someone gets addicted off of, say, TV, could they get addicted off of TV and get in trouble by their parents?
Could they get addicted? Do you mean to TV?
Yes, like watching TV constantly.
Yeah, people can become... I don't know if you can really become fully addicted to TV, but you can certainly watch TV obsessively.
Well, why people get addicted to the internet?
Yeah, I was going to say, in video games. I mean, kids.
Video
are
gaming
on
is a bigger issue, right?
Just huge.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm addicted to something. I might as well confess myself. I'm addicted to AM830.
You are
He is addicted to AM.
We agree with this. You listen like all day long,
Yeah,
right?
he listens to every show.
You know, I tried calling our line earlier, but then Randy told me that it's a recorded program.
Yeah.
Does he allow you on?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I went on to his Lug Nuts Radio earlier.
Okay.
Okay, but he listens to AM 830 all day long.
All right. Sonny, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I have a plan. I want to try to...
Say you have plans, Sonny. Say you have
plans. Have a 2-hour show of my program. The first hour is going to talk about sports and take calls. The second is going to be like Andrew and Judah, what they have.
Wow.
That's a high compliment, considering he listens to the radio
He listens to the radio all day,
and he
wants his second hour to be like our show.
But, Sonny, listen, from now on, when somebody asks you what do you want to do, never say I have a plan. Say I have plans. Because you never hear, the only time you ever hear people say I have a plan is when they go to kill somebody. You hear terrorists say I have a plan.
You're getting scared of him.
A little bit.
You're getting scared of Sonny.
Yeah.
Sonny's not going to take you out. Don't worry about it, Judy. He likes your dance.
I think Andrew and Judah pick on how good guests.
Yes, and what's your third question?
Or second question, really.
You guys get mixed up on that, don't you?
Yes. What's your second question, Sonny?
My second question is that is there any way where you guys can help me from not getting addicted on the radio anymore?
That's actually a good question. He always does ask good questions.
Well, I think that, Sonny, everything's a balance. So I don't think that the question is it getting in the way of you doing everything else, or are you not doing other things? Do you not have any other life other than listening to the radio?
Yeah, I do. I have my homework to do. I always wanted to turn it on, but my parents are already saying, no, you're going to do your homework first, all right? You need to do that, all right? You can't listen to Scott Van Pelt. You can't listen to Rex Heller Wonderdog, all right? Lug Nuts Radio. You can't listen to Clean Radio. You can't listen to that.
Wow.
I mean, my gosh.
What about your girlfriend?
Huh?
What about your girlfriend?
Oh, well, I got good news on that. I haven't been with her in the pickle since, so that's a good thing. That's for sure.
And
Okay, let's just go to question 3. Let's go to question 3.
That actually is a great question, though.
But we'll get back to it.
Yeah, we'll get back
Okay,
to
so
when
what's
you're off
question-
the air. We'll answer that
Because
question.
we got to take a break in a second
Yeah.
here. So get your question in quick here, Sonny. What's question 3?
All right, round 3 here. Here we go. Question 3 is that when I do go on over there next week, and that damn well better be for sure, is that would you guys loan me some gas money?
Oh my goodness!
What do you mean? How are you gonna? You mean for your parents to drive
Right?
down?
Because you're not driving yet, are you?
No, of course not. But no,
And
my
that
real,
bicycle
my
doesn't
real
take
third,
gas, does
my
it?
real third question is that do you guys really want me to call when I'm having sex with my girlfriend?
Oh my
God.
goodness!
Sonny,
Sonny, you've gone from like our best caller to like our most inappropriate caller ever.
Sonny, you've gone like. Have we changed you? Have we
Right?
corrupted you?
What's going on with your parents? I think maybe they need to like ground you or something.
Oh no! I missed you guys. You know, I gotta meet you guys, and I gotta drop.
Ant
on
corrupted him, by the way.
And corrupted him.
Ant is
well,
the one that
I
corrupted
think we're
him.
going to go back to our first plan, which is to meet you behind the metal
Detectors at LaGuardia at LAX.
I've heard this show take some left turns before, but that one's classic.
Yeah.
That's classic.
All right,
Sonny.
Sonny.
Sonny, email us.
Yep. We got to take a break.
I did email you guys.
No, well, email us again. We'll get back to you. I
Oh,
promise.
wait, what am I supposed to do?
Email, and then wait for a response.
How about 5 emails a day?
Oh boy, Sonny, we're gonna get you out. We're gonna get you into a
next
wilderness
week.
program.
Next week we'll have him in.
We're gonna send him on vacation.
Hey Patrick, say hi to Patrick for me back there. By the way, I looked on YouTube for It's Always Sunny. It's not on there.
Patrick, how come Always Sunny isn't on YouTube yet?
It just hasn't been a top priority.
And Sonny, we do have a few other things rolling on other than thinking about you.
But we do love you, Sonny.
Yeah, we do.
And thank you for being our number one fan.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. And you can always go on my own website and just try to order tickets to go see us live. We're going to be performing at the Greek Theater over there in I believe it's in LA pretty soon. I think it's next month sometime.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
Still
great.
tickets available. I already gave you guys the website.
Cool, Sonny.
All
We'll
right.
talk to you later.
We got to go, Sonny.
Later, Judah.
All right.
Later, Sonny. He is our biggest fan, Bradford. I know you're sitting there in shock right now of what's going on. What did you sign up for tonight?
It is
And
a
we haven't
pleasure.
spoken to Bradford at all about who he is and what he does. Should we go to break now?
Yeah,
or
we're going to
just-
go out on break real quick.
We're going to go out and
Come
break.
back.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio. The number here is 877-830-830. That's 877-830-830. Give us a call. We'll be back with Bradford Bancroft.
Is your drinking getting worse? Are you taking more pills than prescribed? Do you want to quit, but quitting on your own isn't working? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040. Our 24-hour staff is here to help you. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. Addiction is progressive. The sooner you reach out for help, the better the chances are for recovery. Call KLEAN Treatment Center today at 888-601-6040.
Do you or someone you know need help overcoming addictive disorders? Call us now at 8778-830-830 or log on to KLEANradio.com.
Clean Radio on Angels Radio AM 830 is presented by Clean Residential Treatment Center, a dynamic and professional addiction treatment facility.
Now it's back to Andrew and Judah.
For the block boy. Yeah.
Wow, what was that?
Scarface, the fix.
Welcome back to Clean Radio. This is
Yes.
Andrew with my co-host Judah.
Hey, hey.
Hey.
And in the studio with us, the lovely and talented Bradford Bancroft.
Thank you, guys. Great to be here.
So tell us about what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Well, I am a new staff therapist with you at Clean.
Other than
It's
that,
just
that's
great. Well, I'm working at a number of different places. I do group therapy at the VA and doing music therapy
Oh,
over
that's
there.
awesome.
And karaoke therapy, which I lovingly refer to. And
Karaoke therapy.
I'm in the PTSD ward over there.
Wow.
And
So I guess you don't play much Metallica.
Those guys are great. I'm also
Yeah.
working in the lockdown ward, and they said, Bradford, some of these guys, it's very dangerous. And I
Right.
started playing Motown, and they turned into little kids. They
Right.
started dancing and
That's so
singing
cool.
and hugging. It was very, very
Yeah.
cool. So music is so
And no
cool.
Slayer though, right?
No Slayer.
No
No,
Slayer.
it's just the old time. Because most of these guys are the Vietnam vets.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're not seeing a lot of
Not the new
newer
guys. They're
vets, really?
still too indoctrinated.
Really?
The Vietnam guys are able to talk about some of the stuff that's going on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
So tell me about that with this indoctrination sort of concept. Is that
Well, the
ruggedness, I guess? Like the
well,
idea
I
that
think the ooh-ah
the
thing,
code,
it's like
there's
the
a
code of
code,
honor,
right?
yeah.
Code of honor.
And so you
Right.
get these guys that are still indoctrinated in the Marine stuff.
right.
So
There's-
most of the guys that I have are the old timers.
I'm surprised that the military doesn't address alcohol use more. It seems
How
to
can
me like
they?
yeah, but it seems to me it must be a huge liability for them. I mean, you even watch old films and it's always like the MPs running around picking up all the drunk soldiers and I guess they just I mean we're seeing people coming back with problems with Ambien and Ambien seems to be like one of the bigger problems, but also painkillers and stuff. I don't know. What are you seeing in the VA? Are you seeing a lot of?
Well, these guys don't want to talk about that stuff.
Right.
The older guys, and I'm just doing creative arts therapy over there. So the kind of work that you're talking about is being done by the psychiatrist, apropos of your conversation earlier. So
Sure.
So that's just one of my jobs, and I do. I've got private practice, and of course, I do a lot of work in the drug and alcohol rehab.
How long have you been a therapist?
About 15 years. I started in drama therapy. I spent 25 years as a working actor, and started working as a drama therapist in a company called Stopgap, and got interested in how we use role play and music and poetry, dance as therapeutic tools, and that was just so cool. So my son grew up and out, and I decided to get my MFT license and
Very cool.
join it with the drama therapy stuff.
So we have to ask you about bachelor parties.
Yes.
Because we're whores like that on the radio.
Yes.
Crazy time. I mean, it's hilarious to me to think about those of us that grew up in like the 50s and 60s, especially as alcohol was so huge in the 50s. I've heard you guys talk about old school actors.
Right.
I grew up in New York, and my godfather was a great character actor named Bradford Dillman. I don't know if you remember him, but he starred in Long Day's Journey into Night on Broadway with Jason Robards.
Wow.
And
Great
Jason would come in after every performance and stick his wrists in a bucket of ice cold water.
That was because of his.
Well, because of the intensity of the drama.
Wow.
And
I'm thinking
then
James Coburn.
That's actually like they use that in DBT therapy now.
Oh,
like
do they?
Stick your face in a bucket of ice, and it resets your whole emotional. It like sets you back, like to.
But the end of the story is that then he'd put his face in a bucket of ice cold vodka and wake up in
Right.
time for the next show. And
Wow.
so that was so much how those old school guys. I've heard you,
Right.
Judah
Yeah.
talk about the old school actors, and so, that's kind of how the.
So I've been told to tell you to do the laugh.
We went. They filmed the end of that movie with me getting back with my wife. Tom gets my wife and I back together again, and
Right.
they decided to cut that from the movie. And so 2 months later, they brought us back because they wanted my character Brad, go figure, to remain this kind of crazy character. And I couldn't remember the laugh. They wanted the laugh to be like he's driving the bus, I drive the bus all over the bloody place.
Right.
And, so yeah, I
That
couldn't
was a
remember.
cool movie, though, because was that an accurate depiction of it? It was one of those that was actually smart comedy that was a little raunchy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started with Animal House a
Yeah.
couple of years before, and then Fox we started as a small independent, and then it really grew, and so we had a couple of big name actors playing the roles first, and they fired them and got Tom,
Really?
who was in doing Splash,
Wow.
and so he finished Splash, and we reshot the whole film. So
Why addiction did you pick? As far as you got it done with acting, why did you pick the area of addiction?
I just grew up in it. It was very close. I grew up in a community that was full of it, and I really feel like I was brought up with the silver spoon in my butt, and so I wanted to give back, and this was something I knew about, and I did a lot of facilitating at Hoag Hospital, doing drama therapy programs there. So
I love how you've combined like your first sort of love of art and theater and drama and music even, and combined it with therapy.
Yeah, and humor. You know, the groups that we do around town and at Klean is really fun and creative. And I always want to kind of bring creative, fun stuff back. We're doing
I think, by the way, just before, I think that's what's lost. I think, is the creative fun stuff, is that this is a field where you can have fun and it can be creative.
Yes.
Well, when Judah came to me and said, let's do a radio show, I was like, oh, no, like a radio show.
He's like, does people actually listen to radio?
Besides Sonny.
Yeah.
And,
we've got such a, like I often say to our folks, we've got such a big empty place inside of us. So many do. And we're filling it with such unhealthy choices. So how do we find healthy, cool, fun things to refill?
And that's really what the show became. Our hope for the show from the beginning was to show that people can be in recovery, and actually that there's all these great things that can happen and you can do, and then we can have guests that can prove that that's actually reality. It's not just something that, a false promise.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know. It's fascinating about I didn't know that Jason Robards was your, godfather.
No, not Jason. Bradford Dillman. But I knew.
Oh, he did a play with Jason Robards.
They were close friends, yeah.
But, it's an example of, like, you look at the old movies and some of those guys are your heroes, but whether it's William Holden, whether it's, and I think today kids, too, they see, how many, Kim Kardashian made $38 million last year, and there aren't great influences.
She made $38 million last year?
She made $38 million last year. And there aren't, it's like in the old days, your heroes were cowboys.
Does she have a perfume or something? Like what?
I don't know.
Really?
I guess she made $38 million last year, and that wasn't from the porn tape. And I do believe still that all people that watch that show, the whole family should be euthanized. But that's just...
Tell us what you really feel.
Yes. I believe society...
That's the eugenics statement just came from a Jew.
Yes, and I have no problem. I have no problem saying that about potheads, and I have no problem saying that.
Wow.
My feeling.
We're not going to have any
No,
trouble with this show now.
That's right.
My feeling on potheads, but I think it is important to have heroes that are sober. And when I got sober, I started looking at, one of the things when we started was I was always curious what Dwight Gooden did the night he pitched the no-hitter, for the Yankees, and he was supposedly sober at the time. Might not have been, but I was always curious, like, what did you do? How did you celebrate? And we're gonna take a quick break, but I want to say something. Kerry Collins used to be the Giant quarterback, New York Giant quarterback, and the Giants had picked him up. Are you a sports fan?
Yeah.
And you remember Kerry Collins, and I think he played for the Saints, then went to the Giants, and he was kicked out almost of the NFL because of drinking. So me and my friend Smiling Bill used to wait for him after every Giant game, and because we wanted to talk to him. And we wanted to say hello. We were big Giant fans. We'd always talk sobriety to him. And he had a driver because he still didn't have his license. So one of the wide receivers, Joe Juravicius, used to. But one of the reasons we did, we used to think it must be so lonely as he left Giant Stadium after a win, and all his teammates were going to party. Like, where did he go?
Right.
And I think it's so important. Like, where do you go?
That long story for that point?
Yes. It was 30 seconds.
It
was 30 seconds, but I think it's important.
The longest story for the smallest point.
Yes. That's how
all of our heroes were rock and roll guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right?
Keith Richards, in the 60s and 70s. It's like it's insane.
Well, only a few of them have.
Eric Clapton is one of those guys.
We got 25 seconds here. We got to go
And we
out,
have
so.
a great comedian coming up next hour.
Yep.
Would you like to introduce him?
Nope.
And we'll be back. We'll be back. And that's just because Andrew is horrible with names. And we'll be back in the studio with Bradford Bancroft. And you're listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 877-8-830-830. That's 877-8-830-830. You listen to KLEAN Radio.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.
Welcome to KLEAN Radio on Angels Radio AM 830.
The Sober Lifestyle Show presented by KLEAN Residential Treatment Center, a dynamic and professional addiction treatment facility.
KLEAN Radio features celebrity and professional interviews covering a wide range of topics. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance in dealing with addictive disorders, call us now at 877-830-830 or go to KLEANradio.com. Now your hosts for KLEAN Radio, Andrew and Judah.
Here we are, back on KLEAN Radio. It's Andrew and my co-host Judah with KLEAN Radio, a show about addiction and recovery.
Yes, it is. Life after recovery, also.
Yes, very much so. And we have two great guests with us.
We do. We have our returning guest from last hour, Bradford Bancroft.
Thank you.
And if that's not a tongue twister, I don't know what is.
I think we decided to call me Joe, right?
Yeah, just
right?
Joe. And sitting next to us, our new guest tonight is comedian extraordinaire Paul Palmeri.
Hello.
Did I say it right?
Yeah.
You also have to talk in the mic.
You have to get right up.
These
in
are
there.
old school mics,
Sorry,
so it's like...
You have to basically make love to it.
All right.
And I found out you're from New Jersey?
Yes.
What part of New Jersey?
Bergen County, New Jersey.
My family lives there.
Yeah?
Yeah, Bergenfield.
Yeah, I was born in Ridgewood.
Okay, so now I have different, because it's a nice area.
Yeah, I saw that face you gave. I said Jersey.
I get it now, because every time I always say to people, every time I say my family moved to Jersey, they're always like, you poor schmuck.
Yeah.
You got to go back there. And I'm like...
Just stay out.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of the Jersey PR kid is, knock it, but just stay out.
Yeah,
Just leave it for us.
You're not really from... That's not real Jersey. That's like, Manhattan Minor.
Yeah, whatever you say.
It's beautiful there.
It's great.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's
like
beautiful.
it's not like you're
I
living
love it when
in.
you get two New Yorkers.
You're not living in
about
Hackensack.
territory.
You're
right?
not living
It's
where Giant Stadium is.
No.
Or
I mean, the
Elizabeth.
Meadowlands is beautiful.
Yeah.
But
That's because the Giants.
I
play
did
there.
almost get killed in Patterson, New Jersey.
you haven't
because-
lived until you've almost got killed in Patterson.
Is
Yeah.
that-
You haven't lived till you almost. That should be like New Jersey slogan. You
Yeah.
haven't been
Right.
killed since you've almost been killed in Jersey. You haven't lived until you've almost been killed in Jersey.
You'd have to get a slogan right for it to be a slogan.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Andrew, yes, and so you're a comedian.
Yes.
You're sober.
Yes.
Because we've actually had a comedian on that wasn't sober, that has never used a drug or a drink in his life.
Which made him
Yes.
sober.
Earl Skakel, good
Oh,
friend.
Yeah, Earl Skakel.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Very
Yeah, he's
funny
good.
man. I call him like
Very,
the
very
Judah
funny.
Friedlander of the West Coast.
Yeah, he's a great guy. There's a lot of terrible people in comedy. He's not one of them. So
How long
anytime
have
you find?
How long have you been performing?
January 2009 was my first time on stage.
And how long have you been sober?
January 2010.
Oh wow!
Wow, so you did 1 year non-sober and
Yeah, it was an interesting. The question is always asked how long you've been doing comedy, and it's always a long answer because first year is kind of a wash. I don't really remember much. There wasn't a lot of consistency. Mostly consisted of just getting on stage. And one of my openers was chugging an entire glass of Jack Daniels. And
wow.
So
that was like your opening.
that
he was at his
it.
house though
I
at the
didn't know what
time.
else
Now,
to
he
do.
thought
It was like the
performing.
Andrew Dice
practiced-
play
I
of
practiced,
comedy
yeah.
for alcohol.
I did my opener at home, and then also when I got
Then he never made it to the club, and he just performed at his
a
house.
few times. Yes, that did happen. So,
Alcohol, it seems to me, it's got to be tough for comedy. I mean, it slows you down, right? You want to be sharper, right?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting thing because I meet people who say that they can't imagine doing comedy sober, and now that I'm sober, I can't imagine being inebriated, so to speak. I'm on my best behavior.
And how has your career been since you've been sober?
Really terrible. I'm not gonna lie to you. No, it's not terrible. It's it's been great. It's a lot of times you find I find that if I accomplish something today, I can continue it tomorrow. Whereas if I would have been drinking, I doubt I would have accomplished anything in the first place. Does that make any sense?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Listen, you're talking to me who never makes sense,
All right.
and I have to speak for about an hour.
But
before
I'm constantly the beneficial part about being sober in an environment where everyone is messed up, and literally everyone's messed up. It's constantly people are smoking weed, they're drinking constantly.
Well,
and,
comedy clubs are set up
yeah,
for people to
it's-
drink.
especially in LA,
Absolutely.
Right, I mean-
especially more so. I've noticed in LA,
right?
as far as the comedy store goes.
Yeah, two drink
it's-
minimum.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
very much like Times Square. It really reminds me of Times Square.
Well, there used to be some major drug dealers
Yeah.
there back in the when I first moved out to LA. I mean, I lived like right around the corner from the comedy
Yeah.
store, and like I remember a really famous music producer who I won't name, and I were driving around.
Quincy Jones.
And
No.
he's pointing out like who the dealers are on the street, like, and they were at all the clubs, just right out front. It's just all right up front.
Yeah,
So,
it's an interesting community,
Yeah.
so to speak. But I mean, it's advantageous to be sober because of. I'm not burning any bridges anymore. Let's
Well,
just
I
put it
mean,
that way,
it's interesting.
You know what I
It's
mean?
interesting you say that because Carson Daly, who constantly gets knocked, he's one of these guys that he's so successful, but he's constantly getting, he's constantly getting knocked. And somebody one time said to him, "How have you become so successful? What have you done?" And he said, "I always showed up."
Yeah.
Right.
It's like when I worked in radio. Everybody was getting drunk. Everybody was drinking. They needed somebody to come in. I was there. He always showed up. And I think that's a really important message, and especially in the entertainment industry, in all forms. It's like the person that actually shows up
right.
gets work.
Yeah, I mean, I've said, since I got cleaned up, that it was if you book me, I'm always going to show up, and I'm always probably going to at least be a decent human being.
Right.
And that's, if I bomb or if I do great.
And they're like, this is stand-up comedy.
Yeah. Well, I got a few that I can throw at you that are.
So funny. I see quite a lot of artists who feel like I could not do my art unless I was doing blow, I was drinking, and so you've got to get over that hump about feeling like I can be creative, I can be cool, show up straight.
Yeah. It took a couple months, but I remember my first real sober show that was a decent chunk of time. It was at the Comedy Store. That afterwards I was like, all right, this is something I can do, and I want to do, for the rest of my life.
See, for me, it was like I was doing a lot of drinking during the day at business lunches, right? So
it's not a business lunch unless you're hammered, right? Let's be honest.
But I used to have this assumption that I was very, very functional. Really high
well,
functioning,
everybody does.
right? Everybody has that sort of feeling, like, and so I never really thought about it. I was like, always like, 2 bottles of wine at lunch, who cares, And then I got, sober, and then you're sitting there and you're sitting at the table and you realize nobody drinks.
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing that freaks me out. Now I look around, and for the most part,
right.
Like, I'm surprised how few people drink or, in a restaurant. And I just assumed everybody was always drunk.
And also because you were probably ordering them drinks.
Yeah, right.
Because when you're drinking, the worst thing is to be sitting
drinking
alone,
alone.
and you're like, oh, got a drink. You end up drinking their drink.
I remember being in New York City, actually. I was closing a deal in New York. It was an unrelated entertainment deal. And there was this lawyer for a really big firm. He took us out to this restaurant for lunch, and he would not let us go. Like, he's like, nah, we're off the clock, I'll give you some
round.
more, right?
Yeah.
And he kept ordering another bottle of wine, another bottle of wine, another bottle of wine. And I was just like, this is insane, I was just like, unbelievable.
But here's the thing: we do pick field. You went to comedy. We tend to pick fields. Alcoholics tend to pick fields that cater to alcoholism.
Restaurant business.
Yeah.
I was just talking to the guy up in Oregon, and besides, till he got into recovery. And now runs this hospital, actually rehabilitation center up in Oregon. And he did restaurants for years, and that's where he really started having a problem. It was alcohol and cocaine, And he actually admitted that, like, he couldn't drink at his own restaurant because he knew as soon as he started, like, he'd wake up in a different state,
right?
With like a 400-pound woman next to him that he didn't know, So.
It's amazing how times have changed. In the 80s, when cocaine was just huge, I went off to go do a film in Zimbabwe and had to gain weight for this role. And I came back, and my agent, who I will not name, said, Bradford, you should do some more blow and, get ready for the next role. And I go, yeah, that's a good idea. I think I'll do that. That's a good diet. Yeah.
My agent told me I had to.
Yeah.
My agent,
Well, it's something we were discussing. I don't remember we discussed this on the air, but the amount of steroid abuse in Hollywood and human growth hormone. And I said
that's actually the big thing.
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody, and they're like, really? Who was this conversation with you? It wasn't you that said really, but if somebody was, and they're like, really? And I was like, who looks like that? Who can look like, you look at somebody on day 1 and day 30, they're like looking like Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
Well, I remember I was watching some documentary on I think it was like New Jersey Beach, in the 50s, and they had like all these muscle guys, and they're like scrawny as hell, right? And now you just go down in West Hollywood, and everybody's getting growth hormone and testosterone and steroids because of wasting disease with HIV.
Yeah.
And so everybody's like giant, and huge, and you're just.
But
like,
it's one of those things that people aren't talking about in Hollywood is the amount of HGH and growth supplements and all that stuff.
And a lot of it's being sold as anti-aging drugs.
Yeah. And we both know somebody, but he doesn't seem to be getting younger, and he's like taking the reverse drug. and it's
got
funny.
a bad batch.
Something happened to like not looking natural, and I think in our society, I don't know, I mean, you could say it's TV, but this.
Well, men really started heavily getting marketed to in the 80s.
Right.
I mean, it didn't. Men weren't really marketed to in the same way. It was cigarettes and alcohol. They sort of got marketed to.
Why did
cars.
we change?
It was more about the product. It wasn't about like men as being an image and an object like women always were.
Right.
Women were always objectified.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this documentary. It's called Bigger, Stronger, Faster.
Yeah, those three guys with the steroid.
The three brothers, and they had the guy on that showed the G.I. Joe, and it was like the G.I. Joe in the 50s was just like
oh, right.
a
Yeah, that was
guy.
amazing, right?
And now the G.I. Joe now is just massive.
Right, it's just like three
It's
different
insane.
G.I. Joes.
It's like I'm very proud of my flabs. I am very proud that I have stayed the same weight for the past 21 years, and I've really often wanted to do like a nutritional, like a flabby
Staying the
bow.
same weight, by the way, doesn't mean much. It means you're losing muscle and gaining fat.
I could care what it is. I am getting fat.
You look
but,
great.
Thank you very much.
No
You're a kind
problem.
soul.
No
and
Judy, just move closer.
Yeah. And I do think it's one of those things. It's people. It's changing, and there's I don't know where it comes from, but you're right. In the '80s, people were like the cocaine lunch. Now it's like almost the HGH dinner.
Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
I think is the bottom line. No one really. Does anyone really know what anyone's talking about ever?
Not right now.
Not right now. You got us really confused.
I apologize.
That's okay. And so you've been performing since 2010 sober. That's really cool.
Yes.
How was your first sober night?
It was nerve-wracking. I guess. I mean, I didn't really make any progress in my first year. I didn't really make any friends. I did a lot of solo at the bar. Just did my spot and just drank, and then just went home and talked to everyone that I knew about how much better I was than everyone else.
Shocking, an alcoholic.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge ego. And then my first show, like I said, was I didn't know if I could do it, quite honestly. And I did it, and it went fine. And it was, ever since then, I kind of, haven't stopped, really. It's really something I think I was kind of always looking for, but I just didn't know. And it all happened kind of circumstantially. A friend of mine that I grew up with, I didn't intend to be a comic, nor did I ever want to. A friend that I grew up with started doing comedy, and we went to college less than an hour away from each other, so we were always going to visit each other. And just kind of through being friends with him, I just kind of evolved naturally into writing for him. I wouldn't write jokes, but something would happen, and I'd call him right away and be, this happened, wouldn't it be funny if? And that just kind of evolved, and that kind of turned that part of my brain on. And once it's on, it doesn't go away ever.
It's like once you've seen a naked lady, they exist. And
back to knowing what anyone's talking about.
Right.
But something interesting we were talking about before, and there's a great story with Eric Clapton that I heard one time, that he was at a certain 12-step meeting, and somebody. Eric Clapton.
I'm just kidding.
And I'm naming names. And but there was somebody in front of him that was going, and he didn't know Eric Clapton was behind him. And this guy was sharing, I don't think I could ever play music again. He wasn't famous or in a band really much. And he's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this sober. And like he turns around, or somebody, Eric Clapton taps him on the back. He goes, it's going to be okay. And
awesome.
And like it's okay. And I think in all these industries, you constantly hear people say that a lot. How can I do this sober? Not realizing some of the greatest comedians, some of the greatest entertainers are sober.
Well, what's funny is that you guys were talking about it when I wasn't in the room, is that I always kind of admired certain people, entertainment-wise, not just, comics exclusively. And now I'm finding out that they're sober.
Yeah.
Right. Like I never knew, like I always was like, oh, I like that guy, but I couldn't really put my finger on why I really liked him or her. And
yeah,
now
the truth of the matter
out.
is you're on a short fuse if you're using.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody can really use. There's very few people that can use successfully for a long period of time.
People always like to say the English actors, the old, the Peter, but they're all dead.
Yeah, I mean, W.C. Fields died in a psychiatric hospital.
Richard Harris, but these guys killed careers.
Yeah. And that's without the drugs that we have now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just basically with just alcohol, and they had, some forms of speed, I guess. But, most of them weren't really using. There's heroin, I guess.
Well, look at the actors in the early 80s that, we have the conversation, many times, the actors that could have had it all.
Right.
Whether it's between, Eric Roberts, Mickey Rourke, all these actors that like were on their way to just pure greatness.
Right.
And then,
You picked two guys in the same film.
I did pick two. I could probably pick three in that same film.
Pope of Greenwich Village.
Pope of Greenwich Village. Then you had Treat Williams. You just had a ton of these
Right.
guys. Ken Wall, Jan Michael Vincent. Who's the star of one of my favorite TV shows as a kid, Airwolf.
Treat Williams, it was cocaine, right?
I mean, I'm
Took him
sure
down,
it was something. I mean, because
Airwolf, was that the one with the helicopter?
yeah, that was the one with the great helicopter. And you had all these, and I loved these guys as a kid, and I can never understand what I loved. And I think so many of the people in America loved these people because you could see that they were their roles. They were pretty much authentic. I mean, Pope of Greenwich Village, Barfly.
Right.
I mean, Mickey Rourke really wasn't stretching playing an alcoholic, but then they stopped working.
Right. What about Oscar de la Hoya?
Oh, that's a huge,
this latest story. That's just, it's amazing someone who's like been at the top for so long. That's kind of like an opposite thing, right? Where like you've been doing really, really well, and then you sort of self-destruct. I guess like Tiger Woods.
But what do you do when the music ends? I mean, that's the biggest thing in sports with so many athletes.
Enjoy your
right?
hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah,
that you've made.
But he has a production company. He had like.
But it's not. I was actually listening to people talk about that this week. It was on a sports show about like what do you do?
How do you replace that high?
Right. What do you like if all you ever had is that high, and that's everything you went for? What do you do when the high is no longer? Where everything was as I was listening to this guy Marcellus Wiley, who's actually a sports talk show host in L.A. and he's a former football player that won at Columbia, and which is very fun. Played in the NFL, really good player, but it was never a means to an end for him.
Right.
It was always like I could do something else. But most professional athletes, this is all they can do.
Actually, a friend of mine shot a Puma commercial with Oscar de la Hoya, and it was one of the first. It was like this whole series of different athletes, and because he does extreme sports stuff. But anyway, and it was the strangest commercial I'd ever seen. They have him on. He's like wearing Pumas, and they ask him. And I'm giving Puma a free plug anyway. And they go, what does he like about boxing? And he's like, it's when I hit the body and it feels like I punched my fist through a watermelon. And I was just like, whoa, where did that come from?
And that was Oscar de la Hoya?
That was Oscar de la Hoya, yeah. And I was like, you think about it, that's what really was his big rush, that type of
years ago I
real...
was in rehab and I heard Jerry Cooney speak. I don't know if you remember Jerry Cooney. He was the Great White Hope.
Yeah.
Lost to Larry Holmes. Was that he didn't remember his fights.
Right.
Not because he was punch drunk or he just was so high.
Wow.
And you look at Tyson, you look at a lot of these. I mean, it's sad.
Boxing's rough.
Boxing is a rough sport.
And a lot of people come from boxing from poor communities.
Right, and which I think is most sports.
Right.
I think, sports are a way to get out, and once you've gotten out and you've gotten everything, I mean, I don't think it's just sports. I mean, you give an actor $20 million that's from, Ohio, nothing against Ohio, but in the middle of the Midwest, and you say, here's $20 million, what are you going to do?
Well, I also don't think people realize how fast you can lose $20 million.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And, you guys were talking earlier about how hard it is to come out as a drug addict, alcoholic, and for somebody that like Oscar, who's
right, that's a great
put
point.
his entire career as being the good, clean guy,
right, like Tiger Woods,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And so
like
how hard
image.
it must be to say, I got a problem and I really need it, without being outed. I mean, to make a choice about.
And when you are a god, to say to other people, I need help.
That's right. Huge.
I mean, that's got to be one of the roughest things. Is you are a god. I mean, it's one of those few professions that it's merit only. There's you can't become the boxing champion of the world without merit. Nobody just gave it to you.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few fields.
Unless you work for Don King.
No, I'm just kidding. But still, you had to work your way up.
You eventually have to win one big fight.
Right. You eventually have to win fight. I mean, it's strictly on merit. And what happens when it's done? I mean, that's got to be just devastating. I mean, you look at, we were talking about last week about, the New York Mets. And half of the 86 Mets baseball team was abusing cocaine. And, with the Lakers. Great team. And the Lakers, with the Magic Johnson, James Worthy. Like, James Worthy was supposedly the pimp of the Lakers in those days. I mean, it was literally like Sodom and Gomorrah, their locker rooms. Because what else is there? And I don't know what comes for. I mean, what else is there? But there is so much more. That's the point.
Yeah, well, Tiki Barber, right? He like had this whole planned career. He's gonna like leave football,
You're right, and become a broadcaster.
and failed miserably, and now he's trying to get back.
And he's going through a divorce, and he's going through
Right.
this horrible time. The rumors are he blew all his money,
Right.
and it's really hard. It's you know, the famous line with Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio is one of my, you know, many people's heroes. You know, Marilyn Monroe. When he was married to Marilyn Monroe, and they came back to New York, and they were somewhere where like 50,000 people were cheering for her, and she goes, "Do you know what this is like?" And he goes, "Yes, I do." And but he was one of those right. But he was one of those rare few people that was able to retire, you know, at 35 years old and live a life of obscurity, but where it's so hard. And I mean, half of it could be because of the internet and because of the information age. How do you go? We don't allow stars to go quietly. And, you know, whether it's Michael Jackson, whether it's any of these, it's like they're never allowed to grow old. We live in a country where we don't want to see our heroes grow old.
Well, we're obsessed with youth.
We're obsessed with youth, and it's like, you know, it's
and
like
we give no value to age and wisdom.
Nothing. And we expect them to be the same at 60 as they were at 30. It's like
Right, or better.
Because you know what I used to get married to? I love Billy Joel. I loved Billy Joel as a kid growing up. But when I was growing up as a kid, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, early 90s. Billy Joel really was done. You know, he was huge in the early 80s. So I would buy his greatest hits.
Right.
You know, I remember A and B. It was like this huge double hits album. So I just thought, oh, my God, Billy Joel never had a bad song. I just assumed that every song of Billy Joel's was this greatest hits. And then I started buying like the Glass Houses and all these different Stranger and realizing not every song he had was a hit. But I had grown up thinking, oh, Billy Joel, and you're never allowed at that point. You know, it's like you're never allowed to become Bob Dylan where you have a few good songs on the album, but not everything was, because it never was like that. And you're listening to Clean Radio. That's Clean with a K. You can find us at cleanradio.com. And you can find us on Facebook at Clean Radio. Wow, I just got really excited about Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And and my heroes.
We're going to get you to calm down a bit.
No, but I'm going to talk.
I want to jump on that too.
I want to talk to Bradford about that because I think it's very interesting. And we're going to take a break, but it's interesting because you're an actor. You were an actor, and you know it's like Tom Hanks, who you work with, is a perfect example. Somebody that we always remember the bombs. And then we don't put enough celebration on the hits, and I think that's something about sobriety is putting celebration on the hits. We're in the studio tonight with Paul Palmeri and Bradford Bancroft, and you're listening to Clean Radio. Give us a call at 877-8-830-830. That's 877-8-830-830. Oh, big old jet airliner, 'cause it's here and I got to stay.
Addiction is any behavior you cannot stop that results in destructive consequences. Are you struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol? Are you ready to take control of your life? The treatment advisors at Klean Treatment Center are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. The sooner you reach out for help, the sooner your new life begins.
Welcome back, Clean Radio.
Welcome back to the Black Parade.
Yeah.
That's from that album by My Chemical Romance.
Yes,
I know.
great song.
I'm kind of over it.
Okay. Well, we'll be switching up the music pretty
It's been
soon.
like 28 weeks of me hearing it. So
Yeah, we'll be switching it up.
yeah, good.
We'll be switching a few things up.
Yes.
For more exciting news, listening to follow us on Clean Radio. I'm still scared. I'm very scared to update our Clean Radio status because of Andrew's mother.
On Facebook.
On Facebook, she is like this.
My mother's an English lit
His mother's an
professor.
amazing lady. I met her.
An
She's
English
really
teacher in high
sweet.
school.
But
And
she's a grammar.
She's a grammar freak.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified of her.
Even with spell check, Judith's failing miserably.
Yeah.
He like replaces words that can even pass spell check.
Lose and loose. And
Yeah, it gets torn apart.
But Bradford, you wanted to...
Well, we were just talking about meeting our heroes, and it's what a pleasure it is to meet people that remain dignified and cool and sane and sober. And Tom's like that. Tom Hanks is just one of the nicest guys, remains a gentleman, remains balanced, spiritual, cool.
Is that because he looks at it as a job?
Yeah, and I think that he's just basically balanced with home, that his life, and I've known him for a long, long time before he married Rita. that really balanced him. But he was such a good guy before that. We had such an interesting conversation about earning our way in this business, that we both came from community theater, and you do repertory work. And another actor in Bachelor Party, who I won't name, we were saying actors shouldn't be allowed to even do movies unless they've got experience in the theater. And this guy comes up and goes, "Wow, dudes, I've never even seen a play."
I'm guessing it's Adrian Zemed, but I won't name names. Not that you said that, but I guess Adrian Zemed.
No.
Not gonna get him.
Not gonna get him.
It's so funny though about Adrian Zemed. Like my knowledge of Adrian Zemed was I was a huge T.J. Hooker fan as a kid, and not Grease too, but T.J. Hooker.
Yeah, well, he's a good guy too.
Yeah, I mean, I saw him on a show a few years ago, and I was like, why isn't this guy working?
Yeah. You know, the other interesting thing that all those shows that came out in hard copy and Real Truth and all that stuff were always asking me, like, give us the dirt on these people,
Right.
Because there was so much dirt to be had, and it's like I guess you guys were talking earlier about the amount of gossip that goes on, and people write. You were saying somebody wrote about your wife or something.
Right.
Well, that's got to stop. That I just always said no, I'm never going to do that. In the 80s, it was just crazy, and there was
people pay so much.
Well, I think that's something we struggle with too. I think
so much money for it. Yeah.
One of the things I constantly listen, I
look
do.
At TMZ. It's how big is TMZ?
We're one of the few treatment centers that doesn't. Andrew's one of the few people that actually has a few set of morals and doesn't release when he has certain clients there, and so and so happens to be at Clean Treatment Center. But how many treatment centers have no ethics? How many treatment centers have accepted clients for free so they could have that publicity? I mean, I think a few years ago it was like with Tara Reid. One rehab was offering Tara Reid a bed or Lindsay Lohan a bed. And
publicly.
Yeah. That's very noble of you.
Yeah, right.
And
or stars, sending out tweets about where they are, because any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, that can be a problem, actually.
Well, I found that at a meeting I was, at a meeting I would go to every day where I met you, that meeting at noon that we used to go to. It was a great meeting, and people started tweeting that they were there, and I don't even think tweeting was alive around at that point. But
it's probably MySpace.
Calling paparazzi, saying I'll be appearing at.
Well, when sorry to cut
go
you
ahead.
off, but when I first started going to meetings and stuff, it was the first question was, "Do you ever see anyone famous there?"
Yeah,
right.
And
so
like,
LA.
well,
yeah, nobody ever asked me that in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
I just went to a meeting in Oregon, and it was like there was it was like a lot of very old people.
Yeah, it's old. It's like, old school.
Somebody got a 39-year chip. Yeah. I was like, wow, you don't see that.
Like?
It had a lot of X's on it.
Beautiful.
It's a lot of candles on the cake.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Right? Yeah.
But it's very weird. You're right. In LA, people are like, and I listen. We do live in LA, so you are going to be constantly confronted with celebrity, and But the great thing about celebrity is there are a lot of celebrities that can be anonymous in getting help. That's the thing about anonymity is there's levels of anonymity. We were talking about that before. It's like, one of the things I used to hear a lot when I was getting sober was do your AA job, and you'll get sober. Just do your AA job. And somebody that I was an idol of, and I'll break his anonymity. It's not breaking his anonymity because I loved watching Mike Tyson because this guy would sweep after meetings. I swear to God, it was like the Champ. The Champ was trying to get sober and he would sweep floors, and. I hear people constantly say, "Oh, I'm scared of the paparazzi." I'm like, "That's the Champ sweeping floors.
Right?
If the Champ could sweep floors, so can you.
Yeah.
Who cares? That's the most famous. That's the Champ. That's Mike Tyson."
That's funny because I was at a meeting one time and someone was sweeping up, and I'd never been to the meeting. I don't know if we put our chair away, and I went up to the person and said, "Excuse me, do you mind?" And they lifted their head, and I was like, "Never mind, I'm good. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
no problem."
You're like,
But
I
it was
can
just
sweep
like,
floors too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit. There's two sides to it, and it's like it's no different in your business. You constantly hear celebrities complain about the paparazzi that have made them famous in the first place, and you have a lot of actors that live in relative anonymity.
Well, we now have this period in history where people are only famous for notoriety.
Right,
I
for
guess
being famous.
Right.
I guess it did happen in the past, or was
Not on this level.
No. Not on this
Not-
level.
not-
Not where it became a massive
Right.
marketing machine like the Hilton sisters. I mean, what is that?
Right.
Right.
I mean,
That's-
obviously you have actresses from the 50s. You know, you had Jane Mansfield, who I guess was sort of famous for her breasts. You know.
But she's also a great actress and beautiful.
Right.
Was she a good actress?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
Well, then the other thing as a therapist is that you get these oversized egos or folks that are used to being privileged,
Right.
and they've got to go through the same shite that everybody else does in getting
Well, you
clean.
get that level of entitlement.
I like how you use that word.
Well,
how
I'm
you
trying to,
slip that
we're on
in.
radio
Yeah.
here. I don't want to get in trouble.
I don't know if using the Scottish version is really any.
Oops. But there's nothing you can only say. Look,
I
you
think
guys.
that qualifies as an accent. I don't think that qualifies as a swap out.
Sorry, fellas.
And by the way, the only reason I shared about Mike Tyson was because he's so open about trying to get he's been so open about it. So he's broken his own anonymity. I didn't decide to break his anonymity.
right.
But one of the things I had great respect for was that, and I think you can have it be be anonymous. It's like, look at who you're talking about. I know nothing about Tom Hanks. I mean, isn't that pretty amazing? He's like one of the greatest movie stars in the world, one of the biggest, and all I know is that he loves the space program.
Right.
I know pretty much nothing
And
else.
he's fascinated with World War II.
And he's fascinated
And it's
with
all
World War II.
speculation based on his project.
Right, on his projects.
Right.
But I could sort of guess that he loves the space program. I know nothing about his private life other than he's married to Rita
But
Wilson.
it's also about giving back. I mean, I spend a lot of my time in the nonprofit community too, and so that's giving back and whatever in the recovery community, giving back, being of service is just so huge and so good for our hearts.
Well, I think that's a huge problem that actors have, and I don't mean to out all actors. I think, I constantly hear, who were we talking about? It was Bradley Whitford, or who's the guy from West Wing.
Yeah.
And he was on the Bill Maher show, and he was talking about, that he has no problem paying more taxes because of all the money he makes. And Tony Dennis, my friend Tony was saying to me, then just write a check.
Right.
If you have no problem wanting to pay more taxes, and I find that it's constantly with the arts. If all the actors actually gave back to the arts, we wouldn't need the government wouldn't need to sponsor
National
it.
Endowment of Arts.
And I think a huge issue that actors have is the lack of service. Where we're blessed in the 12-step community that there's sort of this primary purpose is to help others.
Yeah.
There's another part of that though, where you get these actors or famous people who think they're experts in something that they're not.
Well, that's most
And
people.
that-
Yeah.
I find that almost equally.
Yes, I know. I
annoying.
mean, right. I was reading George Clooney thinks Matt
know?
Damon should run for president. I'm like, yes, definitely.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
extremely qualified.
Right.
I know he was Jason Bourne.
He hasn't played
And
him
yes,
even yet, though.
Yeah,
He
right.
pretended to be
It's like,
president.
let Morgan Freeman be president. And I love Morgan Freeman. I could listen to him talk anywhere. I could listen to Morgan Freeman, talk at McDonald's, and I'd be happy. But as far as being the president, right. But I think there's this huge problem that actors have is they don't give back.
Right.
And if you don't give back, you can't be okay with what you have. And I think that's one of the coolest things I've learned in the 12-step program is that I'm okay with what I have because I've given it back freely. I'm not saying that it'd be this martyr, but I couldn't be okay with it if I wasn't helping somebody else. And I think that's the cool message, that I would it's like you look at actors and you say, just give back.
You're right. That's right.
And most people, I think athletes and all these people that go through struggles, if they would just be more of service, and I'm not saying every single one of them, but I'm saying if you're of service, you're not thinking about yourself quite as much.
But it's also what the motivation is behind the service. right?
Doesn't
You
really
can't just-
matter.
No, I think it does. I think just giving service, like as PR or whatever, sometimes isn't right. I mean, you have to
Right.
still have some
Yeah.
sort of
With all their
genuine,
foundations,
like,
right?
has to be-
Not being a tax shelter. But I'm saying if you actually, give to my foundation. But I'm talking about the actual people that actually do give back.
Right.
The actual entertainers, the actual athletes. Not just celebrities, anybody.
Selfless acts.
Yeah, selfless
Yeah,
acts that
that's
just
right.
decide to give back are generally happier people. One of your clients was, because I, volunteer a lot at the place, and we were out yesterday. We went to the movies. He couldn't understand that I actually hung out with them, and it was fun. And we were sitting in the Waffle House. We were about to see this movie, Colombiana. One of the patients here
How
goes,
was it?
It was horrible, and it was horrible movie. So if anybody's interested in seeing Colombiana, it's not Zoe
There
Saldana's
goes our
favorite.
sponsorship
great.
from that
It,
studio.
it does because it's Zoe Saldana, or
Yeah,
however you
it's,
pronounce her name. You could put her again. You could put her
Zoe
in.
Saldana from New Jersey.
You could put her in Siberia commercials, and you'll be like, "Let's go visit Siberia," and you'll want to. It'll look a lot better with Zoe Saldana.
You can run for governor of New Jersey.
I'm working on it.
You're working on it, right?
No, politics is not something I'll do well and just say that right out front.
That means there's a history there? Or?
No, I don't
know. The last governor of New Jersey, there were a couple of ones ago.
Yeah. The bus stop. The bus stop governor.
Good old McGreevy.
Yeah.
That guy. I remember when that story broke in New York, like...
I heard people thinking it was a joke.
Yeah, someone came in and said that, and I was like, what? Right? Are you serious?
Yeah.
And then...
But that's another thing we've spoken about is sexual addiction. And
right.
And
well, just disingenuousness. You know, people have to feel like they got to hide what they are, or they get caught up in stuff, and people living lives that aren't real.
Well, that's what I mean. If you just brought that up, that's kind of what I wanted to say when we were talking about Oscar De La Hoya, is that him and other athletes, Alex Rodriguez comes to mind. There's a whole slew of athletes that seem to have everything, but no one really buys it.
Right.
You know, like with Alex Rodriguez, there's a great contrast, right? Same team as Derek Jeter. Is that everyone was mad at A-Rod when he came to New York because he wasn't Derek Jeter, but not just because on the field.
He wasn't authentic.
There was just something off. And that, I think, with Oscar now coming forward doing and saying what he,
He's being authentic.
He's being authentic, but I think there's a large segment that's still kind of like, yeah, but...
What do you guys think about Michael Vick's new contract? Everybody was talking about this today. He's got a $100 million contract. Has he served his time? Does he deserve a break?
He went to jail for 2 years he's been to jail.
In California, you can go to jail for less time for killing a human being.
Right. He's done. There are 2 NFL players. One what's his name, that killed somebody in a DUI.
Leonard Little.
No, but there's the other guy a few years ago. He, the wide receiver. And you're right, Leonard Little is another guy.
Dante Stallworth.
Yeah, Dante Stallworth. And you have Leonard Little, and you have that did a year max. I don't even know if Dante. And you have Michael Vick, who did an atrocious thing. But it's like forgive.
Right.
And people are allowed to have redemption. And it's so amazing that we live in a country where people are more upset that he killed dogs, which I love dogs.
People like animals better than they like people. Let's be honest.
It's true, and it's so amazing that I have to preface that with saying I love dogs.
Yeah,
it's like I'm scared to offend the dog lovers out there more than I am the people that have been murdered.
Don't upset an animal.
Right?
Lover.
Don't you upset an animal lover? It's like look at the PETA people. If you upset PETA, don't cross PETA. They will.
I love that group because the treasurer, one of the members of the senior management gets pig insulin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but she doesn't mention it. You know? It's like she's dependent on it to stay alive.
And I think about that with Michael Vick. I was thinking about that $100 million. You know what? God bless him. He deserves it. That's what we're about.
Hell yeah.
He was punished. He did the punishment, and I just read that his bankruptcy, whatever arrangement he set up, is they've never seen anything. He's basically paid back everything that he owed. So he didn't take I'll pay you 30 cents on the dollar.
He didn't do what everybody else in America does.
He's done everything he's technically was supposed to do to get this contract.
Well, he definitely screwed up. He did some really horrific things.
But who doesn't?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think, and it's so amazing. My friend said this to me one time years ago. A friend of mine, one of my closest friends, came into my office in Brooklyn, and he needed money for something. And I was like, what do you need it for? He's like, I need it for therapy. Right. And I was like, do you mind if I ask what it is? And he's like, the whole thing was it was a sexual issue he had. And he goes, you're really lucky. For you have this, alcoholism is accepted. He goes, my stuff, it's not. Right. And I felt really, and it's like it's so funny how in our country we're okay with certain mess ups, but we're not okay with. And it wasn't molesting boy, it wasn't anything like that. He just had a certain, difference in sexual stuff, and I felt really bad for him at this point. And it's amazing that, we look at athletes or entertainers, and it's like Alec Baldwin. Perfect example, caught on tape screaming at his kid the most atrocious things.
That wasn't the first thing he did.
That wasn't right, and yet he's on every major commercial now. Somehow Hollywood has forgiven this guy, but Hollywood won't.
Mel Gibson's having a little rougher time.
Right, Mel Gibson is having a little bit of a rougher time, but we choose who we want to forgive.
Of course, the anti-Semitic stuff doesn't help in Hollywood.
Well, that doesn't help. And years of him joining, the anti-Semitic stuff that really hurts. There's no way around it. You get caught on. But on the other hand, you have Sean Penn going to talk to dictators. So there is this contrast of like, okay, it's okay to talk to Chavez, but how dare you say an anti-Semitic remark?
Right.
And as I'm more offended by Sean Penn. We sound like a political show now. But again, there's no forgiveness in our. you got to forgive.
Well, this is the issue. Really, is that it's about redemption, forgiveness.
Right. That's right.
That is a central concept in sort of the American vernacular and culture. The concept of redemption.
Right.
And
Well, we love a comeback.
Christian.
That's
Yeah,
right,
we love
that's
a
right.
comeback.
No, we love a comeback that we
Yes.
want to accept.
Yes.
Right.
We don't always want to allow a comeback that's uncomfortable for us.
But Bill Hicks had that joke, right? Was it Bill Hicks? Who was the comedian that was like, it was Bill Hicks, right? He's like,
Now I'm nervous.
He was going on about like he was saying nasty things about Christians or whatever, and they were like, Bill, you're going to hell, and he's like, well, then forgive me.
That is Bill Hicks. But it's a perfect example with Oscar De La Hoya. He came out after all his apologies. He said yes, and it was me that had the dress on in the picture. Because he had the famous picture of himself cross-dressing, and I guess that's your whole question: was he really authentic, or was it to build up his image?
And the other thing too is he's promoting a fight now, so it's like, all right, Oscar, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's awful to be questioned like that, though. I mean, that can't be easy.
But it's on you.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, it's like, again, it goes to this whole, if you live a good life, and I'm not saying a moral life, and you and I have had constantly these discussions of morals and
What's
ethics.
moral development
right?
and
I'm not talking about if you're a God-fearing man and you go to church every Sunday. If you're living a life where you're trying to live a life of nobility, people will accept you, and I think that's the problem people have with A-Rod, is nobody believes him. Same thing with Roger Clemens. I remember when he played for the Yankees, and I'm sure you remembered.
Right.
People hated him.
Right.
He was never accepted because they didn't feel like he had that struggle.
Right. Well, look at Lance Armstrong. What's happening with him now? It's really interesting to see what's going to go down with that as more and more stuff is coming out. Did you see that
with his
60 minute
doping and blood doping and testosterone
that he got
abuse.
away with it for so long.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to
I don't think anything because of the cancer. He's always got the cancer card.
Yeah.
To his thing is like he's always got to pull that out. Testicular cancer. And
just the idea that people really believe that professional sports,
especially
athletes,
cycling.
Yeah, cycling. I mean,
which is everybody.
There's no way to do that. Well,
Right.
there's ways to do it legally and not legally. You can train in Colorado at 9,000 foot elevation plus and get the same benefits as blood doping and training at 4,000 feet of elevation.
Which is amazing because
it's
people
the same effect.
That was in the Bigger, Stronger, Faster documentary.
That's right.
They laid out a whole bunch of different
There was
things.
what was the
that
other
this
one? The hyperbaric chamber.
Hyperbaric chambers.
Right, yeah.
You can
It seems
do
to me
this.
they should have an asterisk now next to some of these guys that's saying, post, steroid time, because you can't even go back now. There's just no way we can go back.
Well, that's the whole.
and nobody
yeah.
believes anybody
That's
anymore.
right.
Like
Yeah.
even if an athlete comes out and says, "Well, it's all Albert Pujols." There's a whole line of next generation of athletes who are doing great, but everybody's like, "Well, I'm not really sure about the home run thing."
We got to take a quick break. We're going to go out because we're going to come up at the end of the show, so we'll have one more segment. You can reach us at 877-830-830.
That's 877-830-830. We want to wish everybody listening to Clean Radio a happy Labor Day. Please don't drive drunk.
Stay safe.
We'll be right back.
After
Is your drinking getting worse? Are you taking more pills than prescribed? Do you want to quit, but quitting on your own isn't working? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040. Our 24-hour staff is here to help you. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. Addiction is progressive. The sooner you reach out for help, the better the chances are for recovery. Call KLEAN Treatment Center today at 888-601-6040.
Clean Radio on Angels Radio AM 830 is presented by Clean Residential Treatment Center, a dynamic and professional addiction treatment facility.
Now it's back to Andrew and Judah.
Here I am, Andrew, with the Judah.
The Judah, yes.
He was just doing a head nod dance.
Like the night at the Roxbury. We were talking about Chris Kattan before. So
Right,
not you and
so-
I. Paul Casey, a friend of ours, was talking about his
Casey,
love,
that's right.
his love of Chris Kattan.
Really?
Yeah, so we were
Really?
both talking. Yeah, I like Chris Kattan. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
liking Chris Kattan is fine.
Yeah.
Having a love for Chris
no,
Kattan
it's
is
just no. But you know what's funny
Hey,
about Chris
everybody's
Kattan?
got to be loved by somebody.
I was saying
Yeah.
before. I was saying Chris Kattan's problem was that he didn't have his Chris Farley. You know, it was like, you know, David Spade had his Chris Farley, but Will Ferrell was much more talented then. So it was like he had him in The Night at the Roxbury, but then Will Ferrell went on to bigger and better things, and Chris Kattan was left in Corky Romano. And yes, that's my.
This is
Corky Romano's a great
entertainment tips with Judah.
And you're listening to KLEAN Radio, a show about
Judah's entertainment tips.
Yes.
So now, Sonny, your only call-in. I noticed you give out the numbers.
You know, the holiday weekends we normally don't do.
We get a slow night.
If I knew that, I'd get all my friends to call in for you.
Well, then it wouldn't be real.
Then it wouldn't be real. We want
who's being authentic
calls.
here,
Yeah.
We're all about authenticity here.
All right.
And thank you for noticing that we didn't have any calls tonight. There's nothing more. Andrew and I are going to go home very sad tonight. Thank you.
I feel very unpopular.
And that's note to self: never had Bradford.
That's the last
never
time
had
we're having Bancroft.
Yeah, never have Bradford Bancroft.
We had
back
Ant on and got 9 calls. Okay.
And then we had a comedian the next week complaining that
he
didn't
got
get
6
as many calls
and he didn't get
as
his
Ant.
calls in. Right. And he still calls and complains.
Yeah.
He called yesterday and complained again.
Everybody's in Vegas drinking. They're not.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's also one of the things we found out. It's such an odd thing, you know, about people calling in and talking. It's still a hard thing to talk about. You know, it's a lot easier for people with emailing and texting and Facebooking. It's a lot harder, this topic. And if you notice that you're an actor, how many shows have there been about addiction? I mean, scripted TV shows about addiction.
Well, and when people call in, they're often scared. I mean, they're terrified to
Yeah.
talk about this stuff. The calls that we've gotten that have been really genuine people that have just gotten sober, or they've had problems with their family, and it gets very emotional and very difficult very quickly. So,
and it's one of those. It's you know, years ago I used to raise money for this charity in Brooklyn, this charity I started actually, and I always found that it was more. It's such a hard thing to raise money for, because when I would go to people and say, you know, there's addiction problems in the community, they would be like, not really. You know, it was the amount of denial that people had. You know, I'm sure you encounter this. I'm sure you encounter this a lot too when you deal with families. It's like you see your child, you see somebody dying, but you don't want to blame it on the addiction.
well, addiction's one thing. Mental illness is another one too. Like in Korea, for example, we used to get a lot of business from Korea in our mental health hospitals all the way in Louisiana, because families were so ashamed that they had a family member that had mental illness, they would ship them all the way to the United States to be treated.
Like in the 50s with women that were impregnated.
Yeah, you'd ship them off to the nunnery.
Yeah.
In the convent.
Yeah.
Have the baby and come back after their summer at grandma's.
The good old days.
Right.
Can I do a quick plug?
Yes.
Speaking of stories, my wife won the Johnson & Johnson Lens on Talent Award for her film, and
what's it called?
Well, she won it for Spent, but she's just put. She's about to go on BET with this film called Burned, about a woman who comes back from Iraq with PTSD and a drinking problem.
Oh, how cool.
And it's a very, very cool film. So it's showing on BET in October.
The reason Andrew and I are looking together is because we are actually in the process of starting a program at KLEAN for it's called A Bed for a Vet. And where we're going to be...
It's actually a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit
division of the company.
Yeah, where we're going to be donating beds to vets coming back with PTSD, and we're calling upon all rehabs to do the same thing.
Beautiful.
And psychiatrists and therapists actually give up an hour of their time a week to the vets coming back.
Let's talk. Yeah, this film's great, and it's starting to get a lot of play out in film festivals, and because of this very interest. How do we help these vets who don't want to talk about it? So not only, it's hard enough to talk about addiction and alcoholism, but, having served your country and then coming back and finding yourself homeless and disrespected. It's deep.
Right, and it's amazing. It's one of those things that, I constantly find them, a few years ago it was a hot topic with the amount of vets that were committing suicide. Or the amount of troops that were committing suicide. Then all of a sudden the numbers went down, so they stopped talking about it as much.
They aged out.
Yeah, but at the time it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then all of a sudden, it's not as big of a problem anymore. Let's stop. And I constantly, instead of finally dealing with it, wars aren't going to end. That's, I think, something we've...
Well, I think when you spend a lot of money training people to go fight, you should spend some money training them to come back and live a normal life.
Right, at least have a boot camp, a reverse boot camp.
Right.
It's like, we spend how many weeks in boot camp? One of the greatest...
there are honorable attempts, like the GI Bill and stuff like that, but it's just not structured and organized, it seems to me, in a way that really reintegrates people. That reintegration part, just giving benefits and then putting people in, regular society, civilian society, it's not enough. It's
Well,
not
to
enough
give-
of smooth transitions.
To give another plug for Clean Treatment Center, I think that's one of the things you actually cater to, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of line, which I'm not, but one of the things you cater to is actually reintegration into society. And I think a problem most rehabs have, or jails, or any of, is they don't have the reintegration process. It's like, oh, your time is up at rehab.
Right. You've been spending a month on the beach.
Yeah.
Now go back to the neighborhood in your neighborhood
Right.
bar.
Right. Exactly. Go hang out with the people, places, and things, and
it's tough.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't do rehab. I just went straight to sober living, and
Right.
that was big because that was learning how to live without drinking constantly nonstop. But also
it's a really important part.
It's
it
huge.
was huge
Yeah.
because there was kids that would come into the house and 3 days later would be gone because
Yeah, I think there's
couldn't-
all sorts of different levels of addiction and different levels of treatment, and different people need different levels of treatment, and we call that in the industry the continuum of care. So some people need everything all the way up to an acute care psychiatric unit, or they need a medical detox where they're just so severely addicted and on a multitude of substances that they're really in danger of having a seizure or actually dying. And then you have residential treatment centers, which is a little lower level of care. And then you have outpatient with sober living, and then you have sober living, and then you just have outpatient, like seeing a private therapist, and then you have self-help groups. So all these things are important, and they all go along different levels, and depending on the severity of one's addiction, and then also we were talking about dual diagnosis, which means having psychiatric problems or mental health issues as well as addiction problems.
right.
You might need additional types of help. So
And the great thing that you guys are doing is that everybody at this table is saying it can work.
Right.
We are examples of it working. So no matter how desperate and screwed up you feel, it's going to be okay. Just be patient. Just get through this.
and give it a shot.
And I think it's you're right. I think what you just said, it's like we all come from different areas of life. We all come from different experiences. But I think one of the things is like, there are people that are scared. When you're in addiction, you're in pure aloneness. It's probably the most solid. It's an amazing, baffling thing because it's this thing you're using to not be alone, yet it ends you up in pure solitary confinement.
Isolation.
Right.
Yep,
You
that's
are.
right.
You have gone from. You've closed your life down.
Yep.
And when
when you can't get out of bed, and,
Right.
Yeah.
you go when you figure out you can drink in the morning, and,
Absolutely.
and there's
Right.
no need to go out anymore.
I used to spend time on Facebook when I was using and get resentful at all these people that were going out and doing shows and meeting people and being like, why is that guy meeting someone? Why can't I meet someone? Then I was like, oh, because no one hangs out in your bedroom.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like
No one hangs out here.
It's like coming home from New York from the bars at 6 a.m. on the subway as you're going back to Jersey or Brooklyn as everybody's going to work.
Yeah, there was nothing worse than walking back into a building when someone was walking out in like
right.
fresh khakis and you just being like,
and those addicts that give away drugs just have friends hang out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
for
like,
sure.
there's
And I think
there's
that's
a lot of that.
But you're right, Bradford. That's a huge point. It's like there is hope. I mean, there's a huge life out there. I mean, and I think I always hate when people try to scare addicts with death. I think the scariest thing for people that are listening at home that might be in addiction right now is that there is a life. And for an addict or an alcoholic, sometimes that's scarier than the threat of death is saying you're going to live an amazing life.
I actually don't think death's the worst thing. I think disability is sometimes the worst. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen people with strokes and other, dementia.
You see it on Celebrity Rehab with, what's his name? With Steven Adler, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Steve.
Or Jeff.
Or Jeff
Yeah,
Conrad.
he was
I mean,
not
an
you
dead.
just see this
old friend of mine. I mean,
Right.
that was really amazing to see what happened to him. We
Right,
did a
from-
film 10 years ago, and the difference is just insane.
In 10 years, yeah.
The other thing that Andrew said that's so important is just starting with, I need help.
Yeah.
I need help. And so you guys were talking about people writing in emails, just simply saying, I need help.
Right.
Even if I can't talk about it
It's a terrifying. I used to I used to go to the AA website and start to read the whatever 10 or 20 questions it is, and the second I'd start reading it, the first 3 times I said yes, I'd be like, nope, ESPN, like immediately run away.
Yeah.
Because it's a terrifying thing to walk through. But
I one time heard somebody say the scariest thing for an alcoholic to say is like sometimes is like to get on the phone and said I need help.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the scariest thing for a person in addiction, to get on that phone and say I need help.
Well, there's a lot of help out there.
Yeah.
We have to wind up the show. I want to give these guys plugs and let them tell us what's going on. So just
Paul,
real quick, what you got?
Plugs. Nothing career-wise, but my nephew is turning 10.
Hello. There we go.
So I want to say happy birthday, Quinn, if you're listening.
Congratulations.
See you soon.
Great.
And you'll be appearing at the Clean Treatment Center.
Appearing at the
I joke that these guys have ruined my life. I used to get up in the morning and read Facebook. Now I read the swing reports. My life is over. It's a pleasure being with you guys. You're doing awesome.
Thank you very much, Bradford. And we'll see you. And Andrew and I will be appearing all week at the Clean Treatment Center
as well.
And we'll be featured there.
We'll be in the lounge
and performing. And
and
thanks
we'll
for
be
listening.
back here next week.
Yes, we will. And you're listening to Clean Radio.
Yep, 8 to 10 every Sunday night.
That's Clean with a K. A different song, no Marilyn Manson. Later.